it's Richard for Guitarist magazine here, and today I want to show you 3 approaches that I've discovered or stumbled across over the years to improve my picking hand technique. They've really helped me personally, and I hope they help you too, so without further ado, let's take a look at the first one. For our first tip, I'm sure that most, if not all of us, have heard of alternate picking. That's where you start a line with a down or even an upstroke, and then from then on you stay strictly alternate. Well, in addition to that advice, I want to point out that the angle of the pick can be really crucial as to how you develop a tone from the string and cross the strings as well, which is a problematic area for most of us. So I'm going to make sure that I'm angled towards the camera so you can see my picking hand, and I'm just going to use a fragment of the G major scale here. Now I'm using an electric guitar with the volume dialed back for a cleaner tone, but actually these work on acoustic. In fact, at home I usually play acoustic more than electric. So I've just dialed this back for a clean. Now I'm doing a finger per fret with my fretting hand, and I'm down, up, down, up. Starting with a downstroke and alternating strictly with an upstroke. Now, that's all well and good, and yes, you can practice that and you can speed it up, but quite often you'll reach a ceiling where things don't get any quicker from there and you just get more tense. And one of the things that I've found that's a reason for that is the tip of the pick has to be out of the way of the next string as you go across. Now, lifting your hand and moving your wrist does the job at doing that, but when you get above a certain speed, it's really difficult to do. So there are 2 things at play here. Firstly, I'm not playing with the pick at 180 degrees to the string. I've got this slight angle. Now, when you're standing or sitting, there's going to be a slight angle there. And it's worth practicing standing up to make sure, if you're doing a lot of your playing standing up, that your hand is in the same position, because otherwise you might practice for months sitting down. Some people did that in lockdown, I believe, mentioning no names, and then standing up and playing, and of course you've lost some of the benefits. So slight angle here, and the other angle is this. So I'm angling the pick slightly upwards towards me as well as against the string. So rather than going with the 180 degrees to the string and lifting the hand, I'm going to put these angles at play and see if it's easier. And it is. I can go across the strings. The fact that I'm picking at an angle means that it automatically is lifting out from this trapped zone between the strings. So that's a really important point worth spending some time on. It's going to take a while to build the reflex, if you like, to put your hand like that. When you look at people from the front, they look like they're playing like this. I'm using a little bit of palm muting, but that needn't necessarily be the case. You could try tipping the pick the other way. Some players prefer that. I'm not one of them, but I'll try and demonstrate. Yeah, slightly bluffy, but you get the idea. I tend to prefer to slant the pick upward towards me. So I'll just dial on a little bit more distortion and volume. It just means that I can play a little bit more uniformly and cleanly and reliably. It's not all about playing as fast as you can, but it's about having a dependable technique where your brain tells your hands what to do and they do it. The next tip is about playing across the strings. The first tip was dealing more with single note lines and about obviously crossing the strings within those, but sometimes you might not be playing 2 or 3 notes per string. You might be playing an arpeggiated chord, for example, and I found a very useful thing for breaking out of that pattern struggle that we can be in as guitar players, is to have a look at some of the more bluegrass type techniques. And one of the things that I noticed is called a roll. If I play this E minor, you can see that I'm using down, down, up strokes. And that's a perfectly valid technique, but I find that if I want to play that style for a prolonged length of time or play it more quickly, then you realise you've stopped breathing after a couple of minutes, and this isn't good. Something that can be very counterintuitive but really useful is to do what's known as cross-picking. So if I take that same pattern and instead of playing down, down, up, I'll go to strict alternate patterns, down, up, down. Because it's groups of 3, you'll find it changes each time you play it. The point of this is not to be absolutely wedded to where the downstrokes and upstrokes are happening, apart from in alternate order. I've done a little bit of that angling there as well. We'll clean up a little bit for clarity. So. I mean, I'm playing about as fast as I can. I'm not some genius with this picking, but I found this really does takes away the fatigue, and then I can move it around perhaps. So if I take this bottom note on the D string and move it around. It's possible to do with the other technique, but it's just much easier. And if I do sit and practice, which I'm certainly going to do and recommend that we all do, then I'm going to use that. So the angle of the hand is really helping, and I'm escaping from in between the strings without thinking about it too much. As a footnote to tip 2, tip 2A, if you like, is that if you mix that technique with your alternate picking and brushing across the strings, I'm not talking about sweep picking in the kind of Yngwie Malmsteen way. Obviously a great technique, really impressive, really difficult. Well, one of the reasons I'm not going to show you how to do that is but to mix. I've just taken this major 7 type shape because I'm playing one note per string. And if I were to I've chosen this because it shows how you might use the downward slant with the pick. Now, it's not my preferred technique as we've already established, but that's just me. And I found that with this, just as with strumming a chord, I'm going to kind of go with it a little bit. I'm not going to keep a rigid 180 degrees because it would just sound like you're really smashing into it. Let me play that slowly. You can see that I'm coming up while I play the descending line with the one movement, and then I'm using my alternate picking. So that's another one that's really worth doing. And a couple of minutes of that a day doesn't have to be at a fast tempo, though again, it's quite good to push yourself so that you don't end up practicing techniques that don't work at speed, but a few minutes a day. So that's using a pick that we've dealt with, or flat picking, however whatever terminology you prefer. But in actual fact, it's not necessarily all about the pick. This isn't learn to pick like a machine gun type tutorial. This is about making music ultimately. So one of the ways that I like to vary things with my own picking hand is not to use the pick at all. And that doesn't mean I'll put it down somewhere safe and then play it completely differently. But I might, for instance, just take the pick, which I usually grip like so, and then I don't quite know how I developed that, but you just put it there in the crook of the finger. So I've got 90% of the benefits of using my hand. So I can play those piano type. Maybe neck pickup would be nicer. or I could play lines, which is quite Mark Knopfler, and there's a bit of Jeff Beck. So instead of the up and down strokes of the pick, I'm using thumb and forefinger. Kind of thing, we've all heard that kind of lick, haven't we? So I like to, as I said, slip the pick into the crook of my middle finger. There are various places and ways that you can hide it. It means that it's available at a moment's notice to go back into more conventional playing, or even picking fingers, hybrid picking. So those are three things that I've found really helpful to me getting my picking hand together, and I hope you enjoy them and find them helpful.